Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Robert Schmid, also known as Mr. IoT. I am the Chief IoT Technologist for Deloitte with a deep passion for all things digital. This week on Coffee with Mr. IoT, I have Charlie Isaacs, the CTO for IoT at Salesforce. Charlie, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Really a pleasure to be here.
Charlie, you are the CTO at Salesforce for IoT. What does that mean? Give us an example. What goes on? What's your daily thing? What do you think about day in, day out? It sounds like you're going to be really one of the leaders for us, leading us into this new era.
Yeah, so actually my official title is CTO for Customer Connection because we don't have IoT at Salesforce. We have IoT CRM, or we have CRM for IoT, or IoT for customer experience, basically. And when I got my title, they were thinking about how my title could reflect what we actually do with IoT. So Peter Coffey came up with the concept that I'm always connecting to customers, and what I do is I connect our customers' devices to Salesforce. And Mark Benioff, when he first came up with the idea behind IoT for Salesforce, he called IoT Internet of Customers. So it makes sense that my title is CTO for Customer Connection. And what I do, to answer your question, sorry about that, that's kind of a long-winded explanation.
No, it's great. I love the background. Thank you.
Yeah. And by the way, Mark was a really, really early adopter of IoT. And I went to him one day, and in a moment of weakness, no, I'm just kidding. He was already looking at what IoT could do for Salesforce. And I said, I really want to focus on, I was in the Service Cloud area of Salesforce. And I told him I really want to focus on IoT. And he said, Charlie, you go do that. And so I still had to do my day job, visiting customers and making, helping customers, enable customers with Service Cloud. But eventually, another one of my heroes, John Toshek, picked me up and put me in his group. And I've been doing IoT ever since then with Peter Coffey. I work directly for Peter Coffey. And if you know Peter, he's an amazing visionary. And he got it immediately. So anyway, what I do during the day is I go out and I visit C-level executives, and they get really excited hearing about how easy it is to do IoT at Salesforce. You know, the executives I visit typically are already Salesforce customers, and they're wondering, they're puzzled by, you know, well, how does Salesforce do IoT? That doesn't make sense because we're using Salesforce for Salesforce automation, or we're using it for customer service. So how does IoT fit in? You know, they're already thinking about connecting their products or devices up to Salesforce, or they've already done it. They've connected up to AWS or Azure or whatever, or they've built their own aggregation layer for IoT. And they're wondering how we even fit in. And when they find out that we're really about improving the customer experience and connecting from their existing IoT platform into our CRM capabilities to elevate the customer experience, they get it immediately. And then when they see, you know, I run a demo or something like that, which I like to do. Sometimes they call me the mad scientist. So I run a demo, and they say, well, you know, it can't be that easy. Let me get my engineer in the room. So they get an engineer in the room, and they say, like I was at a hot tub manufacturer a few weeks ago. I like to talk about hot tubs. It makes everybody laugh when I talk about, you know, they envision people in hot tubs during the meeting, and makes people laugh. But they called the engineers from across the hallway in the warehouse they were working with one of their partners, Particle.io, which you probably know pretty well. They're one of the IoT frameworks or platforms. And that was their chosen platform. And they say, well, if Salesforce is that easy to connect to, we've got the guys from Particle across the hall. Let me invite them in, and let's see how easy it really is. And then they said, we're going to take a break. And they took a break, and within like 20 minutes, we had their hot tubs in the warehouse. You know, one of their hot tubs, they were using it for their prototype, for their next generation hot tub. They had it connected up in a Salesforce pushing, for example, a pump. And they were checking the current level on the pump. And we're pushing that in real time through Particle.io. into Salesforce, and our product's called IoT Explorer, and we were switching states when things were going awry with they dropped the current in the pump, and it would trigger a notification in Salesforce. It would trigger a Service Cloud case, for example, and they were just completely blown away that it was that easy to do that. So anyway, to make a long story short, I've got the best job at Salesforce. I like to have fun, and it's fun because we're able to do stuff like that in real time.
So you're talking about how it's easy to connect. You talk about how you help people to really bridge the gap between the things they have already connected to your operational systems. And you talked about hot tubs. Give us an example of what number-wise savings or improvements you've seen with some of your clients. And I'd love to hear client name, sort of like to make it real for people. You know, you talk about connected customers. I love that title, by the way. But, you know, just tell us an example what that means for people.
Yeah. So Emerson is an example of a company that's really proven their ROI. They do building control systems. They do consumer control systems like HVAC systems. And what they've done, well, what they used to do, and these are their numbers I'll use, and these are public figures because they've improved them and they can talk about them now. But when they used to install HVAC systems or heating and control systems in buildings, and especially in residential homes and things like that, they would have to return to the location, the customer location, to fix something that was omitted from a checklist. They used a manual checklist to check off that they tested, like the heater. They checked the air conditioning system. They checked the flow control. So they would manually check all those items. And what they did with Salesforce was they connected sensors from those devices, and of course from the thermostat, into Salesforce IoT, and they were able to do an automated checklist. So we have a concept in Salesforce IoT called a state machine. So it's called IoT Explorer, but it switches from, my heater is good, my heater is bad, right? That's a two-state system. So when the heater is bad, you want to create a case in Service Cloud, which is a trouble ticket, and you route a technician to go fix it. That's a really easy state condition. And we make it easy to connect the device data into Salesforce. So we become that extension cord from the device into Salesforce to allow you to easily create that case in Service Cloud or create a custom object, a row in a custom object in Salesforce. So what Emerson did was they said, okay, well, we have a 10-state situation. And the 10 states are, we check the heater, we check the air conditioner, we check the thermostat, we check blah, blah, blah. You go through the checklist and it switches from state to state. And it won't let that technician leave that location until all 10 steps are accomplished. So if they try to close out their service order or their work order, and we've got this thing called Field Service Lightning, where you can create work orders and trouble tickets, and you can dispatch the technician, but it won't let the technician leave the location until all the states have been checked off in an automated fashion. So you're asking for numbers. What they found was that 40% of their implementations were not completed in one way or another. For example, they forgot to check the heater in the summer. Who's going to check a heater when it's 95 degrees outside? And even if you turn it on, are you going to be able to tell that it really actually functioned without looking at the sensor reading? So they instrumented all of the devices they have, and they pushed them into they had their own IoT aggregation layer, and then they filter it down even further, and they push it into our platform. And we went through that automated state machine transition, and we didn't let that technician leave the site. So they're essentially saving 40% on their truck rolls, right? So they don't have to re-roll the technician to the site to go fix the problem. So they're not getting, hopefully, and I think they haven't been, so hopefully they see whatever a 40% reduction would equate to in dollars. We don't know. I don't know what that is exactly, but but hopefully now they're not dispatching technicians during the winter to go fix the heater. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's amazing. 40% not completed. That's fascinating. And so now to lower this, I can immediately see how that's going to save them on service costs because they don't have to dispatch people again later on. Very interesting. So I'm curious, I have to ask you, you said this before, you talked about Mark Benioff telling you, yeah, you can do this at night at first. And that was when you were doing Service Cloud. I got to ask you, what are you doing at night now that IoT is your day job?
Well, okay, so when you love something, you spend day and night on it. And I've loved IoT from the start. And I've got little tinkering projects I'm working on. And I don't know, what's an example? I mean, I've got, here, am I allowed to hold stuff up? I don't know if you can see, this is like a, this was one of my tinkering projects the other night. This is something I took, I had to integrate to, this is a particle IO button. And I had to integrate to this for the, the hot tub people because they were using this framework. So I learned how to do that. So I said, well, it'd be cool to be able to take it one step further. And I don't know if you see the LEDs turn on, they change color. So if I push a button, there's a button on this side, I'm pushing buttons. And then what's happening is it changes color when I push a button. This is going round trip from this button to my Wi-Fi to Particle IO's framework in the Salesforce state machine. So when a white button turns on, that's in state 1. When the red button turns on, it switches to state 2. So I'm getting it to cycle through that state machine. And I could do really cool, compelling demos with this. So what I do is I enable at night, when I'm not visiting with customers, I'll take something like this. See, I got it to turn on too. If I do button 2 and button 4, I have the state machine set up to send a message down through, we have this code in Salesforce called Apex code. And I told to send a command down to Particle IO to do a disco dance. So there it goes. There's my disco dance. So if I hit button 2 and hit button 4, it goes into disco mode. And this is, I'm going to take this out to a customer that doesn't really know what they're doing with their device and say, look, you can simulate. Does your device have a push button on it? Well, these are the cool things you could do with that device. And sure, it's kind of boring and it's kind of easy and mundane, but what you can turn it into fun when you show them how it switches through the state machine by pushing a button, and then get it to trigger an activity, like even triggering Apex code in Salesforce to write out to another layer. So I'll do things like this. And the other thing we do, and there's another guy, Dan Harrison at Salesforce, that really took this to the next level. But so I've got more people we've got a whole group of people now. We call them black belts at Salesforce. I used to be like the lone wolf. And Mark said, go do this at night, but I was actually doing it during the day too. So, and especially when John Toshek and Peter Coffey picked me up, I got to do this, and I focused primarily on IoT. And we got, even before we had our IoT Explorer capability, we had like 80 customers enabled on IoT in one way or the other. We had everything from, we even had a medical device, which is a knee implant called OrthoSensor, connected up to Salesforce. But this electric yip device, I don't know if this is showing up. This has got, I'll leave this with a customer that's just building a product, and they haven't been able, you mentioned ROI, they haven't been able to prove their ROI yet, right? They had no way, how are we gonna make money on this? We talk about raising the customer experience, but if we leave something like this with them, this is a temperature sensor. I don't know if you can see this, a temperature, humidity, and it's got an optical sensor. This is the optical sensor. And this is a accelerometer. So if I shake it around, I can change the reading on it. And there's an LED that can flash on and off. So there's like 5 sensors in this thing. And you can simulate anything, any type of device with this. You can imagine, like, oh, I was at a medical, a wristband company. They're making a medical wearable, and they wanted to simulate blood pressure drop and patient temperature rise. Well, guess what? This has pressure on it, and this has temperature on it, right? So I could do that with this, or I can use the optical sensor to simulate blood pressure rise or drop. If I cover it up, it's going to drop the optical luminosity, right? So I can take that reading into Salesforce. I can show them how it would look by triggering activities and workflows in Salesforce. And then they can go to their executive team and say, look, pretend this is a wearable, right? we can prove our ROI based upon what this thing is doing. This is not really what we're gonna. This doesn't look anything like what we're gonna build, but give us the funding because this is what we're gonna build, and this is what it looks like, and this is how cool it's gonna be on the customer experience side, because the customer experience side is solved by Salesforce.
Got it.
Sorry, I rambled on.
By the way, if you're just joining us, I'm Robert Schmid, the Chief IoT Technologist for Deloitte, and you're watching Coffee with Mr. IoT today with excited Charlie Isaac from Salesforce talking about all the different use cases. And now what I just saw was, you spend your day with customers and then at night you figure out how to show customers how amazing IoT is. I gotta say, it reminds me very much of what goes on in my life. I spend a lot of time talking to people about how they can actually get value out of IoT. And it seems to me you take this to the step of, and here is a piece that connects and here is how it works, and show them actually, because showing is better than talking about it. I like that. I'm curious, I have to ask you a totally off the beaten path question. Living and spending a lot of time in San Francisco, you can't miss the new Salesforce Tower. I have no idea what you can tell me, but even if it's a tease, what are you guys gonna do around the Salesforce Tower?
Okay, so we have several partners that are installing products and that installed products in our building who are partners. Companies. There's a building control system partner that we have, and if you went to Dreamforce, you can see. Let me rattle off some names. Like Schneider is one of the companies you may have seen at Dreamforce. You may have seen some elevator companies that we actually had a simulated elevator on the floor at Dreamforce. And so there are several use cases around that. What happens when you're trapped in an elevator? It should have all the information instead of calling up and giving them your location and what your status is. It should know exactly which building you're in, and it should proactively call you because it should know that you're stuck in an elevator or there's a control system problem with the elevator. So if you can think of, and one of the companies, I talked about Emerson, with thermostats and HVAC systems and things like that. So I'm not allowed to really talk about what we're doing in the tower, but you can use your imagination and see that the goal is to connect as much stuff up and leverage the capability within the tower. And the best thing to do would be to talk to the folks that built the tower and the facilities folks and find out exactly what the plans are around that and where we're moving in the future. And I didn't give you the forward-looking statement slides.
Oh, so, yeah. Hey, you got to be proud of the tower, though. Place where you're going to take your clients and me at some point.
Well, what's really cool, yes, and I've already taken people into the tower, even though I'm not really allowed. You can't go to the top floor yet because it's a work in progress. They are taking tours through the top floor, and there's a video out that you can get, and we can send the link out later, showing the top floors. And the top floors are going to be, we call them the Ohana floors, where they're dedicated to giving back. And maybe at this moment I should plug the 111 program.
The ones who don't know, huh?
The company. Do we already all know about the 111 program, where 1% of profit?
Please tell us. I love it. You can never talk enough about that one.
Okay. Well, basically, we're all allocated 7 days of volunteer time, and that's part of the 111 program. And we have a whole organization, Salesforce.org, or the Salesforce Foundation, that's dedicated to giving back. So all the money that came from the 111 program is funneled into support those people. And if you're a nonprofit, you could get allocated free licenses. That's one of the 1% of the free product offering in the 111 program. So what I like to do is I give back. Since you brought it up, my favorite organization that I'm working with lately is called Black Girls Code. And it focuses mainly on, we start with 8-year-old girls up through seniors in high school and even college level girls are giving back, and they're coming back and volunteering. But it's all about getting young women into STEM. And we have a chief equality officer now at Salesforce, Tony Profit, who's an amazing person. And there's a quote that I'm going to botch, but he said it, and I like to say it too, that education is a great equalizer, right? If you can educate everybody, all the underrepresented people in the world, then that's a great equalizer. So let's educate everybody from a technical standpoint, because I'm biased, and I'm selfish too, because I want to see these people work for Salesforce, right? I want to educate as many underrepresented people, because we have we want to feed the pipeline. We want all these great people. We want a diverse workforce in Salesforce. We want to get all these people in Salesforce too. And I'm sure Deloitte has the same philosophy. I know I've actually volunteered at one of the Deloitte. By the way, thanks for
Impact Days. Did you come to Impact Day?
I came to one of the events where we packed some sort of care boxes for homeless people. I think that's the event it was a Deloitte sponsored event. But by the way, thanks for being a great Salesforce partner. Thank you to everybody from Deloitte that's on the phone, on the line. Great to have you as a partner. And I did an IoT hackathon with the Deloitte team in Canada. I think it was about a year and a half ago. That was great. And my favorite use case there was a retail use case. You had a great like beacon-enabled retail use case. Anyway, I'm getting way off subject. So I was talking about the one-on-one program. So I try to dedicate my time to young women in tech, and especially minority women, because I think that's a double hit for me. It's doubling down. And I highly encourage people to, if you have technical skills, even if you don't have technical skills, go mentor some young people. Anyway,
all it takes is some passion, which I see plenty on you. I love the 1-1-1 program. By the way, I think it's 1% of Salesforce time, 1% of Salesforce equity, and 1% of Salesforce profit. Is that what it is?
Product is the other.
Product, okay.
Yeah.
So that's what you give. So thank you for that. Thanks for your time. Thanks for talking about it. I appreciate it. And yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Correlates a little bit to what we do with Impact Day every year at Deloitte. So, Charlie, it was great to have you on. Is there anything we missed talking about, or did we get through the gamut? Besides, I mean, I just love watching your enthusiasm for what you do. It's great to see how excited you are about IoT.
Well, no, the message to the folks at Deloitte and anybody else that's watching is that, don't boil the ocean, don't make it difficult. If you get the customer enabled and rapidly enabled so they can connect their devices, connect their products up quickly and easily and show the ROI. And with Salesforce and Deloitte together, we could do that really rapidly to prove out use cases. It's all about proving use cases. So doing the what ifs right there in the room and being able to, all you need to do is OAuth into Salesforce basically from your device. And that's my other fun use case. We did last week, we connected. This is a nighttime activity I did, but it happened to be focused on, it was supposed to be the end goal was to get a customer enabled for a day event. But we connected ABB's Yumi robots. We started off at like 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and we had the Yumi robot expert. The guy's name was, well, I shouldn't give his name. He'll get flooded with calls. But we'll just call him Robert. Hey, Robert, if you're watching. The guy was amazing. He and his colleague programmed the robot, and we just fed. They have a C#-like application running in the robot, and all we needed to do was do an OAuth connection into Salesforce through platform events, and we were pushing the data, the real-time state transitions from the robot, where the arm was or what position it was into Salesforce, so we could. For example, say, oh, it's making coffee right. So we hooked up an espresso machine. So the robot was making coffee. And then we had another use case. We did 2 different use cases. We took one and we took boxes off we put boxes onto a conveyor belt when a customer did an order. So they'd order something from Salesforce, and then the robot would pick up the product and put it on the conveyor belt in the factory. And we demoed that to the executives at Salesforce and at ABB, and they loved it. So it's amazing. Where I'm going with this is it's amazing how quickly you can do stuff and prove out use cases. Sure, that's not going to be enabled for factory tomorrow, but it's scalable code that you can use to implement. All you need to do is do the fine tuning on it.
You rock. I appreciate your content and all the great ideas that come out of you and the enthusiasm. Thanks for joining me today, and please join me again next Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, for another Coffee with Mr. IoT. Actually, next week we're gonna have a special birthday edition because it happens to be my birthday, and it happens to be a rad one. And I'm gonna have a bunch of guests on that you typically wouldn't see. But I'm gonna not give it all away. You're gonna have to join next week if you want to see me on my birthday. With that, if you haven't seen all of today's show, or if you want to see some past shows, please come and check out my YouTube channel. With that, goodbye, everyone. Thank you, Charlie.
Bye. Thanks very much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thanks.